right, so for the people that don't know, this is Jack White, who is 91 years old and one of the most intelligent and sharpest people that I've ever known. He's like a father figure to me. Ever since I moved here to Kentucky in 1993, he's basically took me under his wing like a son. So the last time that I was here visiting, he gave me this tape recorder, and he asked me, he said, William, can you figure out how to use this? He said, I want to record myself talking about my family history. But instead of doing that, I decided that we were going to take it up a few notches and bring in a videographer, and we're going to do a documentary about Coach White. We call him Coach White affectionately. He was a coach for years at our high school, at Shawnee High School. So I'm going to let him talk about his family history, which he's traced back several generations. And mind you, his hearing, he's hearing impaired. So oftentimes I'll write things down on this notepad in terms of questions. He can understand some things and he can read lips very well. But I believe you will be very impressed by how detail oriented he is, especially for his age. Again, he's 91 years old. And it is a wonderful thing to have an opportunity to archive some information from our elders. I encourage everybody to take advantage of any opportunities you have to sit down and talk with your elders, and to get the stories that they tell about their history and their experiences. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started with our interview with Mr. Jack White. So, Coach White, you've put a lot of time. You have put a lot of time into tracing your family history.
Yes.
Yes, you have.
Yes, I've put a whole lot of time tracing my family and what is odd about family, and to try to promote the idea that all black people should trace their family, because we are really one. We are one. You're going to have the good, you're going to have the bad. So I would like to express some odd things. It's hard for you all to believe in my family and my past history, because I've always wondered about the beginning, my beginning. I've said many times things that hurt me in military. But when I got ready to go to the Army, my father said, Jack, as long as you are black, said, you take up for your family, take up for your people. I did it, and it hurt me. But if I had it to do all over again, I'd do the same thing. So I'd like to deal with the oddities in family, okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I will let you get started telling your story. I'll let you go ahead and start.
I'm ready?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. On my father's side, my father's name is George Howard White.
Okay.
His father's name was George Washington White.
Okay.
His father's name was Isaac White. Isaac White was the old white man's son. Mm-hmm. This is my great grandfather. I'm going to tell you how that come about. His mother had a slave woman. That slave woman, this man here, impregnated the slave woman. Hence, Isaac White. Now, this is hearsay, but a white person contacted me and said if she wanted a picture of Isaac. I got a picture of Isaac downstairs. It's 130 years old. I told her I would give her a picture. She said, I will send you a picture of his father. Now, let's bear in mind, this man impregnated his mother's slave woman when he was 15.
Wow.
Now, she also sent me this man's mother. She is a Rogers. She's from the famous Rogers family from Bardstown that started Kentucky. I also traced her family, and I traced her family to Thomas on the Mayflower. Also, I traced it back further. I traced it back maybe 40 generations.
Wow.
Yes, I traced it back to Caesar. I can show you, I got it in black and white here. Now, I looked at this. When he got old, Isaac was never a slave because he would never let him be a slave. Isaac will have 11 children, 2 girls, and 11 boys. The 11th boy was named Levinus. It was hard for them to decide to name the children, and he's got one that I couldn't find him. He had an odd name that black people frown on. His name was Sambo. Sambo White actually lived and died in Dallas, Texas. I found all of his children. He himself had 12 white children. When he got ready to die, he sold his property to Isaac. Now, they said he gave his money, but Isaac was never a slave. And this is the family on my father's side that I could trace back to the Mayflower. Now, I also have paperwork here where, if I keep on going back, I can trace Joseph. The Rogers will turn to be Germans, and they'll change to a Fitz Rogers. They will change names. I can track it all the way back to Caesar. I got paperwork right here. So what I'm saying is, that's what all of us need to do on my father's side. This, Grandpa Isaac's wife was a Seminole. She would leave the family and go back to the white people. Now, to show you how race works, let me show you. We all know what a Seminole Indian is. But a Seminole Indian is not a Seminole Indian. A Seminole Indian originated from Georgia and Alabama. It was another tribe. I can't think of the name, but half of the tribe went along with the North, and the other half went along with the South. The ones that went along with the South or went along with white people are still there. The ones that left there are the Seminoles that moved into Everglades. That's history. they will have a leader named Osceola. Osceola will have generals, and he will decide to give up and surrender to America. The American government, they captured him, and the history tells us he died before they got him out of Florida. But Osceola was a young man, so what I'm saying, they killed him. He was dead before they got him out of Florida. They didn't get him to Washington. Now, here we must remain. Indians were going into the Everglades. Who was already in the Everglades?
I don't know.
Black slaves. So at the present time, the Seminole Indian tribe is still at war with the United States. And some of this history we should look at. Now, I say this because I feel America has become great because of the mistakes that we made. Number one, Civil War. Number two, slavery. Number three, Trail of Tears. Look what we did to the American Indian. Number four, Manzanar. We put American Japanese in prison camps during the war. Coolies. We got Chinese over here to build the railroad to the west. Now let's go back to, well, what part did we have to do with that? The most glorious thing in our history is the blacks and the Buffalo Soldier. We all know about that. But do we know the beginning? The president didn't name the Buffalo Soldier. They sent the Buffalo Soldiers out in Arkansas in that area to protect the settlers going west. And as they proceeded in doing that, the Indian looked up and he said, him black like buffalo. Hence, Buffalo Soldier. When they got ready, they didn't need them. They took away their horses. Did you know what they gave them?
No.
Bicycles. But my great uncle was a Buffalo Soldier. One of the biggest race riots in America was in New Braunfels, Texas, close to Houston. Right after the Spanish-American War, when Roosevelt couldn't get up San Remo Hill, he asked for the Buffalo Soldiers, the 9th and 10th Cavalry. My great uncle was one of them.
What was his name? What was his name?
His name was McDougal.
Okay.
There was a bad side to him. He killed his wife
Oh.
in Jeffersonville. I, being meddlesome, went back and said, I want to find his body. I went over to Jeffersonville and I said, what's this I hear about him killing his wife? She didn't want to talk to me. I said, ma'am, I'm a McDougal. My grandfather married Minnie McDougal. I found out that when they had that race riot, they hung 10 or 12 American soldiers. That's the history they don't want to talk about. Some got bad conduct discharges which took their citizenship. I had a neighbor that told me nobody knows my name because of that race riot in New Braunfels, Texas. Here within the last 20 years, America apologized for what happened during this time. I'm telling you this because of awareness that we should have all of our children should have about what happened in America. Now, I found someone contacted me and said, go to the graveyard in New Albany. Said Anthony McDougall is in that graveyard. I went over there and found him. Come to find out, his grandson is a doctor in Indianapolis. The other grandson was a brother in the lodge. His name was Leroy, and we become very close. His name was Leroy Caldwell.
In our Masonic lodge, was this
Leroy, well, he died a couple of years ago. But he was Anthony McDougall's grandson. There was another that's living there now.
Was this at North Star Lodge number 3?
And on the Lodge 3. No,
Not in our lodge?
There was one Lodge 3.
Okay.
One Lodge 3. There, Anthony was my grandmother's father. My grandmother's father's name was John McDougall. They were brothers.
Okay.
They were brothers. So I found that's on that side. And we got a grandson lives in Jeffersonville that's an engineer. He had a grandson that lived in Seymour. He was one of the first blacks to drive big trucks. His name is Leon McDougall. He was coming out of Cleveland, and the metal broke loose and the truck come through, killed him. This is on the McDougall side, which is my father's mother.
Your father's mother. Got it.
Now, along with this, we black people are prejudiced with our own. My grandmother, for example, Jack, don't you go out here and mess with no black girls. My grandmother.
Wow.
My brother was light complected. When he was born, he was light complected, had good hair, and they named him Sonny after the ancient song called Sonny Boy. It's an old, beautiful song. They spoiled him. They sent him away to school to Detroit to work on cars. I was known as Little Black Jack. The same people that called me that, I had to bury some of them. I put them away. The same people, when I look at color, I look at my grandfather, James William Smith. Now, what I'm going to tell you, you're not going to believe. James William Smith had 28 living brothers and sisters. Grandpa George Washington Smith was born in Henry County, Kentucky on 12 December 1815 and was owned by a Gabriel May. At the age of 18, he was sold to Thomas Smith, whom he served for 10 years, and then was sold to Jess Carrico for $1,000, who owned him for 22 years. Upon obtaining his freedom in 1863 and assisted from his master, he and his children were hid on a train leaving New Albany, and when they arrived in North Vernon, Indiana, they were met by Joshua Millhouse. I want to say that. I want you to remember that name, because what I'm going to tell you, you're not going to believe. Joshua Millhouse, the Smith family, in finding a place to live, George Smith married again and settled in San Jacinto. He was the proud father of 28 children, 16 sons and 12 daughters. His wife, Frances Dement Smith, better known as Grandma Frankie, worked for the Millhouse family all her life and is buried in the Hopewell Friend Cemetery. Barbara Joshua Vickers Millhouse was a grandfather of late Richard Nixon. Richard Millhouse, president. Now, my grandfather, who was one of the 28 children, I've been trying to find all the children. I found 24. One of them come to visit us. He was a draft dodger. His name was Wayne Wellington Smith. He chopped the Smith and ended up Wayne Wellington. Of the 28 children, I only knew 4. Now, I don't know if you can see this picture, but there's a picture. That woman sitting on their father's lap is my mother. That one that you can't see on that picture, we called her Dot. You know why we called her Dot?
No.
Because she was black. That's history. I said, well, how did Aunt Dot she changed, she got lighter. Me being medicine. Uncle Grant knew he had a barber shop in Columbus, Indiana. He would cut rich white people's hair. If black people wanted to get a haircut, they'd go to his house. He knew President Nixon. President Nixon come to Columbus and visit him. Uncle Grant got to be very wealthy. But if you was black, you want to get your hair cut, you go to his house. So the graveyard.
Now let me ask you a question.
I went to the graveyard. It's close to where I live. And because of racism, the black people that were buried there, which is my great-grandmother, and 2 of her children are buried in President Nixon's family graveyard. That's history. I got the graveyard here. Where the black tombstone was at, it's blank. I told them about it. This was a part of the Smith family that I thought that I remembered where racism. My grandfather had a big son named Bill. He got boys wanted to argue with him. Grandpa played a banjo. He could eat a banjo up and a mouth organ. I got the banjo. That he told Uncle Bill, "You're getting big now. If I was big enough, I'd whip you." Uncle Bill said, "Well, I don't believe you." Grandpa, we called him Pop, he said, "Well, let me tie you up." He let his father tie him up. My grandfather took a buggy whip. And you know what a buggy whip looked like? Mm-hmm. And he whipped him. I wondered why Uncle Bill lived in Chicago. He run off, moved to Chicago. Now, Uncle Bill had a brother that worked in the foundry. When he was 15, they emptied some hot steel on and killed him. Uncle Howard Smith. That's how my grandfather got his property. I remember him. He had funny ways. I have what my grandmother had, otis corosis. He would make her go to grocery store, had new buggy, had a horse. Me and my brothers would go because my grandfather never would go. The other horse had a horse named Trim. Trim didn't like me.
Why not?
I did not like Trim. Every time I'd throw rocks at him, and he'd big, sound like he was farting. He'd run. But that was my mother's side. Now, on my mother's side, here's something else you're not going to believe. My mother's name was Eulalie.
Eulalie.
My mother used to give poetry by Paul Arch Dunbar in Negro dialect. She was good at it. I've got her tape where they took and they wanted to tape it and send it to Cincinnati in the Black History Museum. She could, for hours, she could speak that Negro dialect. Okay, back then. My mother's Dixon side, my grandmother, which I had otis cirrhosis, my grandmother was a Smith. Okay, now Dixon, which is my middle name, Grandpa Dixon was my mother's grandfather. Okay, now his name was Dixon. My grandfather told me that Grandpa Samuel Dixon on my mother's side came from Africa. And when the master wanted to change his name, he said, I don't want to change my name. And they asked him, well, what do you want him to call you? Call me Smart Aleck. I laughed. I thought it was funny. Mother said, Jack, said, that's not funny. I said, why? Said he had a name. He had an African name. I said, oh my God. He died, Grandpa Smart Aleck. But the strange thing about Grandpa Smart Aleck, he was married to a white woman. Her name is Shannon O'Malley. She is from Cork County, Ireland. Now I want you to tell me, how was an ex-slave married to a white woman during the 18th century? I'm going to tell you why. They also imported Irish people here. They were called indentured servants. They worked 5 years, not 7 years, and they were free. Hence, Grandma Shannon O'Malley, Grandpa Smart Aleck's wife. Now, the whole history behind this is they suggested that the white women married black men so the children would be slaves for life. That's your history. Hence my great-grandmother. Now, on my mother's side, America Welch. She come here from North Dakota. She was half Indian, Blackfoot Indian. She will have a family that's buried in the family graveyard in North Vernon. Now, she will bring 3 women with her. One of them will die, be put in a private cemetery. But when we go back and check our history from our families, I look at both sides of the families, the father's side, the mother's side, and the strange things in our family. This now that brought me to this attention that I think black people, when I talk about family, a black family, military hurt me
Why do you say that?
because I had too much mouth. Okay? Now, whenever you said something about black, let me share something with you. There was a black entertainer. She was right now, she was a singer. Her name was Billie Holiday. What, you haven't seen. Do you know how she died?
No, I don't know how Billie Holiday died.
She died in Lexington, Kentucky.
I did not know that.
She was a drug addict. She wouldn't shut up. She kept singing a song called
Strange Fruit.
Strange Fruit.
Strange Fruit.
Do you know what the strange fruit was?
Yes, indeed.
The people that were hung. And me being meddlesome, I wondered how many people were hung in Kentucky. Over 200 and some people were hung in Kentucky. The slave capital was Lexington.
I believe
So when
that.
I look at that, they tried to shut Billie Holiday up. They chained her to the bed. That's where she died. That's the reason I said our young children, they should know everything that's happened in history. Now, let's go back to me being militant. When I was in Columbus, I said, if my mother ever got sick, I'm going. My mother got sick, I went on leave, they sent me to Korea. Okay? Now, this is going to be odd. The most people in my military career were the problem with me. Okay. When I got to Korea, Sergeant Jones said, well, you ought to play football and basketball in Korea. You ought to join the Army. I asked for a transfer. They transferred me to the service club.
And you were in the Air Force.
Huh?
Air Force.
Yeah, in the Air Force, U.S.
Yeah.
Army Air Force.
Okay.
I was stationed at Kimpo. That my job was driving the laundry to Seoul and picking up the laundry. But what we would do, there was me and a white boy named Muncie and another black boy named Clark. We would pick up the Korean women and take them over there and party in Seoul. But the strange thing about that was when we crossed that river, there'd always be dead bodies. Now, what I remember about Korea was picking up the dead bodies. Go around, put them in Conex boxes and freeze the bodies, send them back to America. I remember looking up, seeing a missing formation. I knew that an American was killed. But when I went on guard detail, they told me, they give me a .45 and a rifle. Said, White, if anybody, I had to walk the fence to guard the airplanes. There was a white officer named Lieutenant Bickey. I ain't never going to forget his name. He tried to slip up on me. I made him get on his knees and crawl up to me and show his ID. He chewed my rear. So when I went back, I said, I'm out here. They said, if a Korean tried to cross that fence, you burn him. I said, that's what the law said, and that's exactly what I did. So the first sergeant said, well, Sergeant White, he done raised so much cane, you don't have to go on guard detail anymore. Just happy. Now, I woke up one morning, I always see a black person in a strange position in Korea. He didn't wear no uniform. So me being meddlesome, I asked him, what are you doing here? He said, I'm not a soldier. You know what he was? He was an interpreter. He's the only one that could speak Korean, and he was working as a civilian. Another bad point. They told us to always lock a door. The barracks, the tent next to us, they left the door open, the Korean come in, slit their throat. We got a plane that seen he was coming in, he flamed out. Turned it straight down, went 12 feet in the ground. The only thing we found was his finger. So, Ted Williams, the baseball player, I met him. He was flying a Volkswagen Corsair. He come in, he didn't know he had a wheel shot out from under him. They said, you got a wheel out and the tail fin is bad. I got to meet Ted Williams. Now, this was the first sergeant black that I had trouble with, okay, in Korea. That, when I go back, when Martin Luther King got killed, my supervisor called Martin Luther King a son of a bitch. You know what I said? Instead of keep my mouth shut, I said, you're the son of a bitch. This colonel said, Sergeant White, said, go home. Said, I want to give all black NCOs 2 days off. That was in Crete, Greece. That's one of the things that hurt me. That I could feel, call Martin Luther King, something like that. They hired me to announce a baseball game. One person said, when they killed Malcolm X, he said it's a baseball game. Well, what you gonna do now that they killed Malcolm X? I said, I'm not worried as long as Elijah Muhammad is still living. You know what happened to me? They fired me. The base commander that hired me told me they fired me. I come home. They hired my wife. They sent her to take a break. She had the finance thing of the base. To fire her, she didn't have nobody to sign for the money because she controlled all the money. They said she stole some money. I sent her home. When I got ready to say, uh-oh, up popped this black senior master sergeant. When I went, they gave me 60 days to stay there in Italy. And when I went to work, the white man over the commissary was a Mason. He said, Sergeant White said, why'd they send you here? I told him, said, I'm going to call Sergeant Jones, a black master sergeant. Said, get on that phone. I got on the phone. Sergeant Jones, does you have an assignment for Sergeant White? He said, well, yes, but the colonel wanted to spend about 60 days to help the commissary. He said, Sergeant Jones, this is not the Army. He said, this is the Air Force. Said, do you have an assignment? He said, yes. Where is he going? They sent me to a base. I didn't know where I was going. Okay. He said, by the way, Sergeant Jones, Sergeant White is on the phone. I said, when can he leave? Sergeant Jones said he can leave any time he wants to. That's the regulation. Said to Sergeant White, when you want to leave? I said, tomorrow morning. The next day, I was on a plane going to Kleinborgel, Belgium. When I got there, I got to Paris. A German come and said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to Johannesburg. He said, no, you're not. He said, Johannesburg, South Africa. He said, you're going to Johannesville. I got to Johannesville. I got a cab and went to Kleinborgel. I found out the military, 3 of my bases were secret bases. When I looked at the bases in America, they weren't there. When I was in Belgium, I would go 10 miles to Eindhoven, the second largest city in Holland, and Bo. They had a full-time army base in Holland. They had a commissary, bowling alley. Kleinborgel, Belgium, I found out that we had airplanes that could carry an atomic weapon. Now, let me hold you right here. Now, one of the big problems, look who's messing with all this classified material. For 15 years, I had a top secret clearance. I'm going to share something with you. Why loose lips sink ships. Biden said he was going to give these other people, these tanks, what did Russia do? Biden should have kept his mouth shut. Now, this is a blank piece of paper. It's classified. Do you hear me?
A blank piece of paper.
A blank piece of paper, classified. I had to keep track of that paper. Now, why would I have to do that?
I don't know.
Because if the enemy overruns you, you eat it. That's the reason Nixon, Biden, all these top people. Now, we had special furnaces to burn classified material. So I don't care what rank you have, if you make a mistake, you are court-martialed. And as far as soldiers concerned, they put your behind out. Mm-hmm. That's one of the problems right now we're having with Trump. Biden told the truth. Pitts got ahead of it. Now, any classified material should be controlled. They have special furnaces to burn that stuff. Why would I eat it? Mm-hmm. Because you could drink the ink.
Oh.
Because there's classified material on that paper. Eat it so the enemy can't get it.
Gotcha.
So right now, when I see that in military. Now back to when I got to Kleinborgel, the commander didn't need a clerk. He sent me to Bitburg, Germany to keep my top secret clearance. When I got there, the doctor said, "What are you doing here?" I told him. He said, "Sergeant White?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm your brother." I looked at him. Look white. He said, "Yes, I'm black." He said, "I'm going to write up your commander." He wrote him up. I carried it back. They give me 15 days to get to Germany. I left the car there. I had an Opel. I got to Germany. A black woman was a captain. She said, "Sergeant White said, they're giving you a lot of problems." I said, "Yes." Said, are you going over Christmas? I said, yes. So I came home from Germany. When I got here, I went to see Connerly, senator, and I told him, so I had to report to Washington, D.C. to a colonel, light colonel. When I got there, he said, Sergeant White, where you know what you know what we do with trouble starters like you? I said, no, sir. He said, we send starters like you to Vietnam. I said, sir, I've been to Korea. This other full-bird colonel said, John, said, you get your shit straight. Said, oh, by the way, said, Sergeant White, go home. Said, somebody will call. I'm going to straighten this out. I came home. I was moving so fast, they thought I was AWOL. When I got home, someone called me and said, Sergeant White, you don't have too long to go before you retire. Where do you want to go? Dayton, Ohio, or Smyrna? I said, I want to go to Smyrna. So I reported to Smyrna.
Where is Smyrna?
When we got to Smyrna, another black master sergeant. It was my job to assign the soldiers to clean the barracks on the weekends. His name was Sergeant Heidelberg. And I noticed him when I go to the club, the white officers would say, hey, Heidelberg. A black soldier said, hey, Sergeant Heidelberg, to you. I said, here's another, you know what. So when I got back, my supervisor, he's white, Sergeant Heidelberg said, you go clean the barracks. So I went to his office. He said, Sergeant White, you take your ass and go clean that barracks up. I said, can I call? No, you clean the barracks. I went, cleaned the barracks up, went to the base commander's office. The base commander's office said, Sergeant Heidelberg, why did you do that? Sergeant White said he assigned someone. Well, the man that he picked was the chaplain's aide. He said, Sergeant Heidelberg, who is the base commander? Why, you're the base commander, sir. He said, you're damn right. From now on, you are not Sergeant White, another black chief master sergeant, okay? Now, when I got ready, when I went to Smyrna is about 20 miles west of Nashville.
Okay.
It seemed like when I got to Japan, they brought in a first sergeant, and he called me in the toilet. He was a Mason. I know we're brothers, we're Masons, but I cannot help you because I'm black and you're black.
He said that to you?
He said it to me. I said, transfer me. They transferred me, and in one of these, I got a letter. I got a letter of commendation.
Wow.
That said that the job that I did because I was over the club. Now, while we're having all this trouble, when I was in Italy, that was a secret base. We played in a band. There was a white boy that came in and he said, I want to play with you all. His name was John Lauder. He said, I want to he started playing the saxophone. I said, how'd you learn that music? He said his dad was a doctor. And they had a maid, and the maid raised him. He was the professional. We were beginners. His name was John Lauder.
What instrument did you play?
I played the bass.
Okay.
We won in Italy. Then we went to Paris. We won in Paris. And the final was in Germany. When we got to Paris and won, we come back to Italy. The base commander didn't want us to go to the finals in Germany, which was the European Championship. A colonel sent his plane from Germany to pick us up to go to Germany. We went to Germany. John said, I'm going to write a song that we're going to play, and the name of the song is going to be Uhuru. I said, what is that? He said, in African, that means freedom. He wrote the song, hence, we won the championship in all of Europe. The trophy broke apart, but here it is. Airman First Class Jack D. White, first place. Instrumental group, The Dimensions, the 6th District, USF Talent Contest. I'm still trying to find John. And I wonder, the Air Force is supposed to give out a commendation ribbon. Where's my commendation ribbon? Because I'm black, they never got me one. Now, when I got ready to retire, the Air Force passed a law that if you had an afro haircut, it was a court-martial. So they asked the wrong person. They asked me. I did not have no hair. They said, Sergeant White, what do you think about this law? I said, if I got 2.5 inches of hair, that's automatically an afro. Instead of me keeping my mouth shut, I said, oh yes. It's not what it looks like, it's what it stands for.
Right.
The next day, this colonel called and told him that, oh, Sergeant White is a black power advocate. So I went through all of this in military, and the reason I bought a lot of this stuff was because when I came out of military, they did the same thing, civilian life. When I went to University of Louisville, when I got my degree, I wanted to know so they asked me, I got my master's degree, to show you the thing is,
What is your
I'm not
degree?
going to tell you.
Okay.
When I got my master's degree, I asked my advisor. He was a World War II white pilot. He said, what do you want to major in? I said, Black history.
Were you still in the military?
Yeah,
You were still in the military?
yeah.
Okay.
He said, okay. He okayed it. In the process of getting this degree, they got rid of him and gave me Dr. Kedbrick, who never helped me at all. Till I got ready to graduate, he come said, I had my gown on, said, you can't graduate. I said, why? Dr. Cook, the other doctor, woman, said he's got 20 hours over. Well, we don't need no black history teachers. That's what he told me. I told him, I said, well, need to be in the history book. About 5 years ago, they come on TV and they had this first black man to graduate with black history, University of Louisville, And that was doing when they opened the black office. 2 years before the black office, I got the degree in black history. Read the bottom of that.
It says Masters of Arts in Teaching with major in history awarded. Area of concentration, Black Studies. Yes, sir.
So I was the first one at University of Louisville that got the degree 2 years before they had an Office of Black Affairs. U of L has never corrected that.
And this was in 1976.
Yeah.
1976.
So that was one of the things that I dealt with when I looked at military, and I looked at the things that happened in military, things that happened to my family. That's the reason that when I look back, I got a son that would argue with me. And I told my son, I said, you know, well, Dad, I'm just like Grandpa. Do you know what come out of my mouth? There is no way in hell you are like my father. I said my mother would argue with him, and she looked at me and she said, Jackie, you don't like me arguing with your father? I said, no. So I've always said this, and one of the main reasons I wanted to do this, but I wanted to be an awareness to all black people. Number one, we're in a difficult position at this moment. I used to be a Republican.
I still pick with you about that.
When Obama run for president, I was a Republican because of my family background. Because it come from Nixon, who was the north end of a horse going south. So I changed to be a Democrat. I want some of my knowledge that I've had. For example, Shoebach Band. I got that in Mexico. Me being meddlesome, well, who was the first people in America? This was one of the most, I got this in Cancun. These people existed in south of Mexico. This was a whole civilization that was here before the American Indian. So you wonder, well, the American Indians were here first. No, these people existed. Now, before then, let's go to Brazil. We know the oldest found person is Lucy.
Lucy, yes indeed.
Who come from Ethiopia. But we find Lucy in Brazil. She has the oldest DNA in the world. They find out that DNA exists in South Africa. I can't think of the name, but I got it written down. That group of people in South Africa are not black, they're brown skinned. The people today that hold all that blood are the Aborigines in Australia. They have the oldest known DNA in the world. I have 1 degree of that. I have 1% of that in my blood. Now, what is so famous about my people, where they come from? Sudan. Do you know what Sudan means? Land of the black people. That's what it means. Look at Sudan today. They're fighting each other. Well, what happened in Sudan? North Africa, when they had slavery, you had the Moors, Africans transporting Africans. They passed a law. I got it here. A Spanish, the name of the law to transport slaves to America. Okay, now, but what is famous about Mali, where a lot of my people come from? Mali, they got an ancient city in Mali that everybody knows about it, but they don't know why they know about it. The name. Everybody heard the name Timbuktu. Everybody, white and black, knows that name. What's famous about Timbuktu?
I don't know.
Timbuktu has the oldest known library in the world. Today they have it. The richest man that ever lived in the world lived in Timbuktu.
Mansa Musa.
His name was Mansa Musa. History will tell you that. It's where my blood come from. But I have the bad, the pygmies, the little people. That's the reason I say it's for you to let your child know where your blackness come from. We haven't always been slaves. We was a civilization. Now, also in Mali are the Berbers. The Berbers would travel and they would have black people with them. I always thought the black people want to integrate with the Berbers, right? Because they were light complected. That's not the case. The black people that traveled with them stayed black. They didn't want to be part of Berbers. The Berbers become so popular, they named the Volkswagen car after Berbers. One of your late model Volkswagen cars is a Berber.
I didn't know that.
Now, the women control all the business. The man did the garden of sheep and everything. The women could go out and play on their husband, but they better not get caught. When we look at customs in Africa, now you all already know, some have a lot of wives, but there's a tribe in Africa that will invite you to their house and you can spend the night with his wife. That's part of their culture. Africa is so different. That's the reason I went back. I wanted to know what part of Africa is in my blood. I think all black people should do that. Now, religion. When I was in Crete, when I took my cousin to church, the priest would sprinkle everybody, and when he'd get to me, they would miss me. There's a Catholic church, right? Mm-hmm. So just for meanness, I would stick my finger in the holy water. Now, I grew up. Now, when I got to Italy, they had what they call a passeggiate. They had poor and rich in Brindisi. They would walk and they would escort their women. So a friend of mine, it was white, wanted to marry the woman, the daughter that worked for me. They had a celebration. Well, in southern Italy, they don't drink water, they drink vino, that old nasty wine. Now they got engaged. Now, if you walk down the street and you try to walk beside one of their women, you didn't get close to their women. They had a celebration. The day they got married, I figured it was all over. That morning they come said, "Come on, Mr. White, we go and wake up John." What are you gonna wake up John for? We went to the house, woke him up, went in, took the sheets off of the bed, and put on the line to show the dead girl was a virgin. I didn't see nothing wrong with that. So that made me think about religion. What's all about the Black Panthers? What was so wrong about the Black Panthers? Nothing. What was so wrong about the Muslims? Nothing. So when I seen the Catholics, they had a Catholic named Father Yusefi. He was slow. They would play jokes on him. And he busted the Madonna statue. They sent him back to Rome, and the Pope made him a saint because of how he was. I went into church. They had a black Madonna. You better not touch it. So that give me a little respect for the Catholics. So I often thought that the Catholic Church was the first church. And I found this out by a Catholic. No, the first church in America was Greek Orthodox. There are 3 of them living. One in Turkey, one in Russia, one in Africa. One in Crete, Greece. The one in Crete, Greece, they believed that if they touched his car, they were blessed. When Hitler took that island, he respected him. He didn't touch him because what he did for. I did not know that Hitler respected Catholics or Greek Orthodox. So these Greek Orthodox has the same power as the Pope. A lot of people don't know that.
No, I didn't know that.
So when I got to travel, I looked at how me and Alfreda went to dinner while I was in Italy. No black people, to Bari. This woman was driving a Lamborghini. She pulled up and come sit down beside me and Alfreda. She said, "Can I sit down and eat with you?" Alfreda said, "Yes." She was adopted by a rich Italian. So by my travel, I didn't want to stay in America because of racism.
Why did she want to sit down to eat with you?
Huh?
Why did the lady want to sit down to eat with you? And
She said there's no black people in Bahrain.
she was black?
She was a black African adopted by a rich Italian.
Got you.
We had to drive clear across from Brindisi to Rome. That's almost 300 miles to get her car. So we had a good. All these bases that I'm telling you, if you go to a book and say, well, where is the air base in Italy? Aviano, a big air base. But there's one in Brindisi. I was there twice. When I got to Africa, it took me 54 hours to get there because they had a propeller, no jets. When we got to Africa, we got to Tripoli. I was there 2 months. They said, Gaddafi said we had to leave. We had an old joke, and that joke, I don't want to trade my Cadillac in for no elephant. I didn't want no part of Africa. So they immediately transferred me to Crete, Greece. That's where my youngest daughter was born. That's where, during the military, like I say, most of my experience I want people to know that most of my experience in military, the only people that give me when the man told me about I was a good fellow, and the guy I worked for said, ain't no black people Masons. I went out of his office, went to the first sergeant. There was another white guy named Sergeant Miller was mad because it says Sergeant Olford made E8 and he hadn't done nothing. Sergeant Miller was in Pearl Harbor when they bombed it. He said, Sergeant White said, I heard what Olford said. I know some people in Washington. He called, right?
Right.
When I went to the commander said, what the problem? I told him. I said, I walked out of the office and they wanted to court-martial me. Are you going to tell me who called Washington? That's what the base commander said. His name was Colonel Green. I said, no, I'm not going to tell you. He said, do you know who it was? I said, yes. Are you going to tell me? I said, no. 2 days later, it generally takes a month or two to get an assignment. I had an assignment to Japan. 10 years later, I come back to San Antonio. I'm still a buck sergeant. A black air policeman come to me and said, my God, Sergeant White, said that base commander, good fellow, said he's been redlining you. Said every time you come up for promotion, he redline you. Now you wonder why you have the hate for racism in military. And the next day, I made staff sergeant. But the joke behind it all, at headquarters security, they had to hire a black person, right?
Right.
They hired one man, one black man. Everybody else was white. My supervisor, Sergeant Reginald Sis, he did the same thing I did. He couldn't make master sergeant. He got out and become a school teacher and become a principal. So what I'm saying, right at this moment, racism is in the Army. It's there. And you're seeing every once in a while they're catching them.
Right.
You know, so that's the whole thing that I wanted to talk about was family. Your children. Your children. What is going to be? What's going to happen to America? We are being threatened. The America that we love is not going to change, I hope. But look what the governor of Florida is doing. He's trying to wipe out black history.
Ron DeSantis.
Now, when I talked about my great uncle, they don't want to hear anything about hanging black soldiers. America did it. When the man that was my neighbor when I was young, he said he didn't have a name. He's some of them black soldiers that they give a dishonorable discharge. Because when they give you a dishonorable discharge, they take away your American citizenship. And a whole lot of these things, your son, your children should know what happened. They should know about Billie Holiday, why they killed her. Are they going to race Emmett Till? Are they going to raise Tulsa, where they wiped out a whole civilization? You mean to tell me now when we look at the governor of Florida, what about his background? Well, his background is Cuba. Well, what happened in Cuba? Before Fidel had Castro, a black man was over Cuba. When Cadet Castro turned around and said America was bad because of the race. Castro was doing the same thing in Cuba. The poor people in Cuba today are the black people. This never changed. The governor of Florida, when the Cubans left during the Cuban insurrection, all of the white people moved to Florida. That's your senator. Wake up, America. Wake up, because even today, I remember the first great Cuban was a boxer named Kid Gavilan. I remember the only thing came out of Cuba was like track, baseball, that the race concern. We need to be right now. I'm not crazy about Biden. I'm going to tell you why. He gave that black woman a job he couldn't handle himself.
Who?
Right up day one. He sent her to Texas to this problem about people coming across the border.
Kamala Harris.
He said the vice president, Biden couldn't do it. He knew he couldn't do it. He couldn't handle that problem. Now, what's going to happen to Biden now? You mean to tell me they're going to let a black woman be president?
No.
Not hardly.
No,
Now,
but not at all.
let's deal with the black woman. When a Muslim was here, what's the leader's name? What's the leader's name now?
The black Muslim
He
leader?
came here.
Louis Farrakhan.
Okay, Farrakhan.
Yes.
When Farrakhan came to Louisville, I went to see him. He said something that dawned on me. Black man, you need to treat the black woman right. And that dawned on me as a whole. That when I seen that, when he said that, what are we doing now with all this putting women in clothes and now? One thing, I'm prejudiced. I'm going to tell you why. I'm a Christian. When I go to church, I can't hear. I have sleep apnea and I have narcolepsy. When I go to church, what happened?
Hey, same thing happened to me.
I go to sleep.
Don't feel bad. Same thing happened
To me, my wife don't understand. That's still embarrassing to me. Now, to me, church is here.
Right.
Here. My mother was a Methodist. My dad was a Baptist. So when the Methodist preacher was an alcoholic. Saturday he'd get drunk in the skunk. When they asked him to send a representative to the Methodist Church to Evansville, he asked for me. I went to hear him. And when you have devilment in your mind, you act. That's anyone. I acted. I went to his last minister. They did things I didn't like. They had an old man, black man, Civil War veteran. They kicked him out of church because he defecated on himself. He had left a beautiful home, everything to the church. That hurt. When he got ready to leave, I said, I want to hear what he got to say. When we got there, the first thing he said, I'm leaving. I won't be back no more. The next word he said marked me all my life. He said, we all fall short of God's goodness. Number one, Uncle Bill was about my age. He said, nothing can go wrong in the church unless they say, Uncle Bill. I got to say, okay. He said, Uncle Bill said, you're going to heaven. But nothing can happen in the church unless they get the approval from you. Said that we all fall short of God's goodness. Said Miss Goodnight said there was a woman coming here to recite poetry. Said you made fun of her. That woman was my mama. I remember her. That kind of woke me up. Before he finished, he said, I know what my future is. I will die in a pulpit, but I'm not going to stop preaching. I forgot all about it. About a year and a half later, my father said, Jack, do you remember Reverend Patton? I said, yeah. Said he dropped dead in the pulpit. Said, do you believe he was a saint? Do you believe he was saved? I said, yes. I believe that. And so now, one of the biggest problems with women today, to make things plain, God made man. Why? Why did God make man? God said he would make man because he was lonely. He was lonely. Well, then what did God do? He looked down. He said, man is lonely. So what did God do? He made woman. But woman sinned. She committed the first sin. Now she committed the first sin. God did not give the blessing to man to bear a child. God gave that blessing to woman through pain. Now the decision that they have to make is not the government's business. That's between that woman and the man upstairs.
I agree.
Good or wrong. Because there's things that happen in our life that man upstairs controls.
There you go.
So I think now what are our states doing? What are our children going to do with this kind of future? When a woman can be raped and she still can't. So there's the big question is there are things that we can't control.
Right.
Here, like Farrakhan said, protection of women. This is one of the things I wanted to stress. That I wanted to stress somewhere in his family is a white man. One reason that I wanted to project to you as younger people, know who you are. I'm never going to forget my blackness. When I come in, this got me in trouble. When the Air Force passed a law about Afro haircut, I could have kept quiet. But I remember my father saying, Jack, as long as you are black, said you stand up for your people.
That's right.
So
You better
that's
believe
what
it.
I wanted to project all of this information, all of this strange. When I said, when I looked at, looked through some of this stuff, I had to bring proof. I'm gonna try to share. This was my retirement as a teacher. Now, I'm working on a song,
Uh-oh.
okay? I don't know if my voice is good or not, but I'm going to try to sing this song to you, okay? What did I do with mine? Can't keep up with my glasses. Now, you all know this song. Every black person knows this song. People get ready.
Oh, yeah. You better believe it.
I'm going to talk about people get ready. The Bible clearly shows the second coming of Jesus is the final answer to all the issues we face. It is our hope in Jesus' remarks. I'm going there to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, and you also may be where I am, as stated in John 14, second, third verse. And in Acts 1:11, the same Jesus that had been taken from us will come back. And the Apostle Peter recorded how we look forward to a new heaven and a new earth, 2 Peter, calling the blessed hope, Titus 2:13. And in Revelations 22:7, 12, 20, we find, behold, I am coming. Behold, I am soon coming. Yes, I am coming soon. So it is well known. Old song, I will try to explain, is known by its words. I have started this, but I haven't finished. People get ready. In Matthew 24:25 chapter, it speaks about what would happen before his return. He will say you will never know exactly when it was so. Keep watching. There's a train a-coming. It will also be of Jesus' warning when the end of time will come, and the only sign the disciples will have of Jesus' coming will be his actual coming. No one shall know, for in 1 Thessalonians 5:2 it will state, for yourself know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the middle of the night. Don't need no tickets. You don't have to pay for the tickets. And that's the good thing, because we can never afford to buy it, only because Jesus paid the ultimate price for it. Jesus took your place and mine on the cross, and by dying, he paid the full wages our sins have earned. You just get on board. It isn't about buying your way. It's about trusting in God, as John 3:16 says. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, and whosoever believed in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. All you need is faith. Our faith must be based on evidence that we observe. We will weigh the truthfulness, and we read the Bible, and Hebrews 11:1 explains it all. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. To hear the keys all humming, and as John 1:12 says, to all who did receive him, Jesus, who believe in his name, he gained the right to become a child of God. Don't need no ticket. Remember, when John 3:36 says, whoever believeth in the Son of eternal life, and in believing in Jesus Christ as our Savior, is our only ticket to heaven. You just thank the Lord. And in finishing, I will quote the most loved, well-known verse in the Bible. Psalms 23, 1, 2, 3, 6. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pasture. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I'm still writing the rest of it.
That's really
So
good.
I'm still working on this. And one of the reasons that I bought a lot of this stuff, it will be people, it says, faith is the key, open the door and board them, that room for all among the loved the most. There ain't no room for the hopeless sinner who will hurt all mankind just to save his own. Have pity on those whose chance are thinner, 'cause there's no hiding place from the kingdom throne. So people get ready, for the train is coming. You don't know. This is it. Now, here, 100 years ago, from the Rushville American, a friend informed me that there is now living on his farm near San Jacinto, George Smith, colored, who was born in Henry County, Kentucky, December the 12th, 1815, as a property of Gabriel Bay. At the age of 18 years, he was sold to Thomas Smith, whom he served 10 years, and later he was bought for $1,000 by Jesse Carrico, who owned him for 25 years. Upon obtaining his freedom in 1865, Mr. Smith removed to Jennings County, where he married and had lived ever since. He is the father of 28 living children, 16 sons and 12 daughters. 4 sons and 2 are in the United States Army. Mr. Smith is in his 70th year. He's in good health. This is proof of the 26 children that I was telling you about. I saved some of this stuff. Oh. This is my grandfather's great-grandfather belonged to the white man. Notice, Nancy will be given a slave woman when her husband, George White, died. Now, that George White rang a note to me, because my dad's name is George White. My dad's name is George Howard White. His dad's name is George Washington White. So I wondered, where did the George White come from? Come to find out, Nancy was married to a white man named George White. So this old white man that I showed you a picture of, his father's name had my dad's name.
So
we find this.
So his father was named George
Our
White.
named Isaac, who as a slave will be listed as a mulatto. The second son, Louis Cunningham. Now, Grandpa Isaac, the slave woman, had a son by a black man. His name was Cunningham. it is said that James White would be the father of Isaac White. James White is the son of Nancy White. I documented all of that. Now, when you get in your family and you're dealing with your family, a lot of this stuff you'll want to document. That's the reason I pulled out a lot of this stuff. And I kept it. This I found out the African heritage. That I got that written in a book about that thick.
Mm-hmm.
This. Now, is there anything I missed? This tells about how what I'm telling you, this is just proof of what I had been showing you about George White. I went back, Isaac White, that's the black man. This is his family, all of his children. The one person that I couldn't accept was Sambo. Why would I name him? Now, my aunt died a couple of years ago. She was 99 years old. She was a teacher at Central High School where you were using school. When I look at that, and I look at these names, all of them, all of these children, and I look at what they did. Aunt Lillian they are two girls. One of them died young. Aunt Lillian lived to be 99. She would tell my father to shine her shoes. They had shine her shoes. They spoiled her. She said she wanted her shoes shined on the bottom. And Dad said, you don't need it. And my grandma said, go ahead. So they spoiled. So this, I keep this. The Smith family, I keep that information. This is the Hopewell Quaker Cemetery. You notice there's no blacks because the white people in that area were racist. Now let's see. See, you can see that question mark?
Yeah.
There's a tombstone there, but they didn't want to pick it and put it on there because they were black. I went up there. It's close to where I was raised. I went and found the tombstone. My great-grandmother was buried in there. I knew this is Nixon's family graveyard. Now, what happened to the Quakers in North Vernon? One half of the Quakers would leave and move to Richmond, Indiana, and establish Earlham University, which still exists in Richmond, Indiana. The other half will move to California, hence President Richard Milhouse Nixon. Milhouse, his grandfather, Joshua Milhouse, picked up my family when they got. So when I tell you, these are some of the things you're going to find out about your family. Both of you. Somebody in your family is great. At this day forward, you need to find out the good and the bad. That is my family. That when I looked at this, when I show you this, it starts out with something, you're not going to believe this. But I want you to look and see that last man. You see that man? You're not going to believe this. I went so far back. This is what Ancestor.com wrote down for me. I kept a lot of it. The things that you're not going to believe. Here is some of my background. Nancy Rogers White was the white woman I showed you. James Rogers, Matthew Rogers, Peter Rogers, Gil Rogers, John Rogers. Right between these two, John Rogers was on the Mayflower. His 17-year-old son was on the Mayflower. It's part of my family. There's Isaac White. Now, this is my family. Was all down. The last person on this one is, do you see that name?
Julius Caesar?
Caesar. I traced my family. A lot of people won't believe it. I kept this. Now, I'm going to tell you something else you won't believe. I traced it back. It starts with Jack White, runs all the way back to Arithma. This is going to surprise you. Do you know who he was? Arithma? He's the man that gave a place for Jesus Christ to be buried. Now, I don't believe that, but
This person here, Joseph Arithma.
yeah, I don't believe that. But this is what I traced my family back to. That's the reason I said everybody is kin. The Rogers will get back to the German family, and it will be Fitz Rogers. See, he'll be Thomas, Bernard, John, Thomas, John Fitz Rogers. DeSalvo, delivery. But when you find out, when you look at your history, you're going to find out all this strange Now here I put down, this is it's Isaac. That is a white man. That is the mother. See, the mother goes on, John is here. So, like I say, I really don't believe this. But when it get back to, I went on the iPad, I said, what Rogers was on the Mayflower? I'm going to tell you what drove, when I taught in New Albany, seemed like everywhere I teach, you run into a race problem. We had a little black boy, he patted a cheerleader on her rear. Scrivener Middle School was my first year of teaching in New Albany. I give him 3 licks with a ping pong paddle. A little white boy, 2 weeks later, broke out a window. I gave him 3 licks, he disappeared. This is my first year teaching. Their mother, I'd look out the window, she was driving a Rolls Royce. Her daughter said, Mr. White, Mama said you need to talk to somebody because they try to get you in trouble. The Indiana law was the only person could give them was me. When they approached me, I said no. It was okay when I paddled the black boy, but it wasn't okay when I paddled the white boy. I refused to give the grade. Years later, I was in New Albany. This black man walked up to me and he said, "Aren't you Mr. White?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Whatever happened?" I said, "The next year was my first year teaching in Louisville. It was at Male High School because what's the basketball player? He was a senior.
Daryl Griffith.
Griffith was a senior. I was at Male High School. I told him. He said, "Mr. White, I'm that little black boy you give them licks to." He invited me to visit him. That's some of the race stuff I had to go through. That's the reason I said it's important that you all go and find the strange things. When I went to Central, the white history teacher told Mr. McPherson I was teaching race hate. I took and showed Mr. McPherson the black history book, and he jumped on it. I had to run in with a lot of people about, I wanted to know the strange things. Half of these 28 children are slaves. And what makes Billie Holiday so strong is strange fruit. Is that some of your people? Is that some of your people? What about the black people that didn't want to be slaves? They jumped overboard. They're in the ocean. They're walking in the ocean. So these things that we should strongly imprint our children. Yes, I'm black, but we're great. Everybody's going to open their eyes. Nobody's going to get rid of the black men. Number one, when I go to my own people that call me Little Black Jack, I had to put their bodies in the ground, give them a place to be buried. I had an uncle that said, "Jack, just go throw my ashes in the Ohio River." I said, "Uncle Dolphin, I think I can do better." He said, "What's that, Jack?" I said, "I will take your ashes and bury them and your mother and father's tomb." I took them to North Vernon and I buried his ashes. When my mother got sick, it was left up to me to pull the last lever to stop her breathing. The nurse told me, said, "It's left up to you." He's in Columbus, Indiana. My mother was 94. I went outside, sat in my car. I cried to myself. I didn't want to do that because my mama was a super mom. I didn't want to do that. I went inside, sat down, went to sleep. Said, "Mr. White," said, "you don't have to do that." My mother said, "Jack, when I'm gone, I want a tombstone with a man and a woman walking in the hills. and looking up in the mountain. About that tombstone. Tall. I put the picture, the man put it on the wrong side of the tombstone. And an old farmer was sitting there, he said, well, said just put the tombstone on both sides. So that's what my father, my mother, I never argued with them. Never. My children are different.
And mine are too.
My children are different. So don't let that happen. Now, when I look back and okay. All righty. Well, this is the main thing that I wanted to get along was what's in my family is in your family. And what has to be said, wrap it up, I hope I have said it about the race. Now, what I want to know is, am I eligible for this black award that they give to blacks in Louisville? I haven't got I was the first black to get a master's degree. I was the first one to in the Jefferson County. I had trouble with Mr. McPherson Central while I was at Central. All my life, I've had to fight for what I am.
All right.
To wrap it all up, I hope that I have projected stuff to you so you can project that stuff to your children.
You have. You certainly have.
I want my ideas to live 50 years from now when I get to be just someone will know something about Jack White.
Oh, we will.
Will
We
be
definitely
something
will.
about the history of black people.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. We appreciate
So
you.
that's all. The main things that I want to know was military is still prejudice. The Tuskegee Airmen, there is a picture of a black pilot. His name is Lieutenant Brown. He got shot down. He was before the Tuskegee Airmen. He was with the Navy. They shot him down, and this white officer followed the plane down and crashed his airplane to save that black pilot. He turns around, he couldn't save him. He come back and paid that black pilot's wife way through college. And in later years, he went back to Vietnam and asked the government to find that black pilot's body. That's a movie that's popular right at this moment. That movie's being shown. So these are the things that you all should know.
Thank you so much, Coach White. We really appreciate you taking the time to tell us your story.
So I hope you learned something. I wanted to promote the idea of black history
Yes, indeed.
and blacks as an American. And somewhere in your family is a white person. Your family. I dare you to find out. Now, when the things that when I use Emmett Till, I remember I got on a bus in Elizabethtown. The bus was black. The black woman behind me, when I got on the bus, you know what she said? You ain't gonna start no trouble, is you? It wouldn't have been so bad that if the white bus driver said, okay, you black people, get your behind in the back. He didn't say nothing. I went through Lexington. A white woman got on the bus, but she told the bus driver, I'm not going to get on the bus with all these niggers. You know what the bus driver did? He said, ma'am, would you step back? I'll straighten all that out. Close the door in her face. Now, I will ask you to do me a favor. When you go downtown to the train station, when you walk in the back part of it, you look to the right, you'll see there's a room. And up above that room is a glass. If you look real close, you'll see that print of colored people only. It's still there. Check it out.
I will. I definitely will.
So that's it, William.
Yes, indeed.